So in this video, I'm going to be running through how I would spend £150 million on players this summer if I was Newcastle's director of football, with the target of getting into the top 4 next season, which probably is a little over ambitious as I think Newcastle would probably be happy with top 7 next season, but for the video we're going to try to make it interesting. But before I go any further, if you need a place where you can keep up to date with the latest transfer news, find all the match stats you need from games across the globe, and watch highlights and stream live football matches, then you need to download the OneFootball app. I use the OneFootball app because it's completely free, and not only do they have stats and transfer news, but they also have videos to watch and articles to read, which is where I get a lot of my ideas for new videos. And as I said before, you can stream live football matches and watch highlights all on the app. Downloading the OneFootball app will help support the channel as well, so I'll leave it linked in the description below. So the reason I've settled on a budget of £150 million is because I think it's a pretty reasonable amount to expect Newcastle to be able to spend, and I wanted it to be fairly realistic, so all the players I've mentioned are all players who I think Newcastle can realistically sign this summer. I am signing these players for Eddie House, although I have to fit into a 4-3-3, but I also want the versatility in the squad to enable him to either switch to a back 5 or a front 2 if needed. So before we get into it, what positions am I targeting? Well, Dubravka is fine in goal, as is Trippier as the starting right back with Kraft as the backup. Now at centre back, I think on the left side either Dan Burn or Fabian Schär could start. I like both, but I'd probably go with Dan Burn. Next to him, I'm going to be looking for a right-sided centre back with Lascelles being the backup in that position. We also need a left back as Target is a good option, but I think we can find a better option rather than making his move permanent. I do think that Newcastle need a defensive-minded midfielder to play in behind Guimaraes and Joe Linton, with Shelvey and Willock being other good options in central midfield. Alan Saint-Maximin is the obvious starter in the front three. I prefer him from the right side, and I'll be looking for a left-sided attacker and a centre forward, as well as Newcastle do have Wilson and Wood. I think I can find a striker who can take Newcastle to the next level, but having those two as well as Ryan Fraser and Almiron on the flanks is going to give Eddie Howe some fantastic squad depth for the season. Quick note before I start, I am building this Newcastle side for the long term with the idea of potentially challenging for the Premier League title in the future. All players signed will be under the age of 27, so that the squad can still be in their peak as Newcastle get closer to the top of the table. The last thing you want is to sign a few expensive names who in 2 or 3 years need replacing as they've hit their early 30s and started to decline. So let's start off with the centre back. Now, as I've said, I am looking for a right-sided centre back, which is why I've ruled out left-sided centre backs like Evan and Dicker of Frankfurt, Sven Botman of Lille, and Levi Colwill of Chelsea, even though I do like all of those 3 players. One name who came to my mind was Arsenal's William Saliba, who I think has the potential to be a world-class centre-back, and despite a fairly impressive season with Marseille, his future at Arsenal is uncertain. He's a fantastic one-on-one defender, having a tackle success rate of 87%, whilst only being dribbled past 0.2 times per 90. He's composed under pressure, able to find incisive or long passes to move the play forward, and he does remind me of a young Rio Ferdinand. His positional play does need to improve, with him sometimes losing his man in the box, and he is prone to an unprovoked error every now and then, which is why I don't think he's as good as my first choice option, which is Gleison Bremer, who is Torino's 25-year-old Brazilian centre-back who's an absolute tank of a defender, standing at 6'2" in height and being very physically strong. He's a tough tackling front foot defender who steps out of the back line to intercept passes and engage the forwards, as seen as he completes 3.3 interceptions per 90 in Serie A this season, the joint most of any Serie A centre-back, was also recording a tackle success rate of 83% and winning the second most aerial duels in the league with 4.1 per 90. He's quick, hard to beat in 1v1s, and pretty good at driving out with the ball at his feet. He's not the most elegant or press resistant centre back, so I wouldn't classify him as a ball playing defender. However, I do think that he'd be a very good option for Newcastle, as he is still only 25 as well. His price is starting to go up as he's begun to attract interest, and so he'd probably cost around 35 to 40 million pounds. However, I do think that whilst it may be £5 to £10 million more than I would likely pay for him, is a pretty good deal for a centre-back who I think will come into the Prem and likely be at the same level as centre-backs like Christian Romero or Ibrahima Konate. If Bremer wasn't available, I'd go for Saliba, who'd likely cost between £30 to £35 million, who whilst not being as good as Bremer currently, could definitely be a fantastic long-term option. Now we move on to the left-back position, and alternative options to my main pick would potentially be re-signing Matthew Target on a permanent deal from Villa, as I do think Newcastle have an option to buy of around £15 million, as I think he has done a solid job. But a player I would look to bring in at left back would be Hoffenheim's David Raum. Raum turned 24 in April and has had a fantastic season this campaign, being the second highest rated fullback in the Bundesliga behind only Alphonso Davies according to WhoScored's rating system. Raum would offer exceptional attacking output, being a superb crosser from that left side, able to curl in low or lofted crosses into the space between the goalkeeper and the defenders, and I think he would give Newcastle a potent attacking weapon from the left side. With Trippier, Newcastle would then have two fullbacks with excellent crossing ability. We can see how good Raum is offensively, as he has completed the second most key passes of any fullback in the Bundesliga with 2.8 per 90, though he does only complete 1.2 dribbles per 90, which is down as the 9th most of any fullback, showing that Raum is much more of a creator with his crossing rather than a ball progressor with his dribbling. I wouldn't say that he's phenomenal defensively, as like players like Alexander-Arnold and Cancelo, he does have positional faults. However, I do think that this is something that Newcastle can deal with because of how good he is going forward, and his FB ref report proves this even more. He ranks in the 99th percentile for assists, expected assists and shot creating actions, whilst also ranking in the 80s for progressive passes and non-penalty goals, which is absolutely phenomenal offensive output. Considering Raum is probably only going to cost around £25 million, I think this would be a much better option than re-signing Matthew Targett permanently. The next position I'm going to look at is in defensive midfield, as Newcastle currently use Shelvey there as more of a creative regista. However, I think that Newcastle could do with more of an industrious ball winner there, who also possesses the forward passing ability to move the attack forward. Maxime Kakare would definitely be a good option. Just by looking at his FB ref report, you can see how good he is, both in and out of possession. He'd only cost around £20 to £25 million, as he has just 1 year left on his contract at Lyon, which expires next summer. But whilst I think Kakare would be a fantastic signing, the player I'm going for is Ibrahim Sangare. Sangare was one of the players I recommended Manchester United sign this summer, and considering he's at PSV, just 24 years old and likely available for a fee in the region of £30 million, he's a player I would look to bring into that defensive midfield position. Unlike Shelvey at the moment, Sangare has the athleticism, physicality and defensive attributes to break up opposition attacks and be a monster in midfield. In the Eredivisie this season, he's completed 3.5 tackles per 90, the fourth most of any central midfielder, was also completing 2.8 interceptions, the most of any central midfielder in the league, and he's also recorded 1.8 dribbles per 90, ranking as the 6th highest central midfielder, which shows that Sangare isn't just a ball winner, he's also an excellent progressor of the ball and excels in both areas. He can drive through central midfield with the ball at his feet or find incisive passes into players between the lines, and these attributes combined with his defensive capabilities, sitting behind the workhorses of Guimaraes and Joe Linton, who can also drive the attack forward, would give Newcastle almost a complete midfield, having the creativity to break down deep defensive units or move the ball forward quickly on the counter. Now we come on to the front three, and we'll start off with the left-sided attacker playing from the opposite side to St Maximin, and for this player I'm looking for more of an inside forward than a winger, a player who can provide runs in behind the back line and also provide a goal scoring threat. A player who I think could be an incredible short-term option for a season or two would be Atalanta's Luis Muriel, who is naturally a striker but plays more as a wide forward and could play as an inside forward from the left. He's been consistently an overperformer statistically over the past few seasons, and this season is no different. From his FB ref report you can see that over the past 365 days from 2009 minutes he's played, when compared against every other forward in Europe's top 5 leagues, he is producing pretty insane output, sitting in the high 90s for ball progression and creative metrics, was also massively overperforming his non-penalty XG by 0.14 per 90. He'd likely cost between 12 and 15 million pounds, as he's only got 1 year left on his contract, but given his age, Newcastle should be looking for a player significantly younger. However, for 1 or 2 seasons, Muriel could potentially be a player who becomes a top level player later on in his career, if he is given consistent and regular minutes, which he has struggled with bizarrely at Atalanta. But a player I would go for would be Feyenoord's 22-year-old Colombian attacker Luis Sinisterra. Now, I've spoken about Sinisterra in a video that may or may not already be out, or should be out soon, where I talk about the wide attackers Manchester United should sign, and with good reason, as I think currently Sinisterra is one of the most underrated players in Europe. He's a very good dribbler, recording the most dribbles of any player in the Eredivisie this season with 4 per 90, but he's also much more than just a dribbler. I compare compare him to someone like Sadio Mane, a player who can play as a natural winger but is better as more of an inside forward, making runs into goal scoring positions, and this season Sinisterra has a pretty good return, scoring 12 goals in 30 league games and 23 in 46 games in all competitions. He's got a great shot on him, able to cut in on his right from the left and finish from distance or inside the box. He can shoot off both feet, driving the ball across the keeper with his left or opening up his body to slot the ball into the far corner with his right. With Saint-Maximin being more of a natural winger from the right, Sinisterra's movement into central positions, playing almost as a forward at times, will give Newcastle balance in that front three, which will also allow Rum at left back to hold the width by overlapping into the space down the flank. I reckon Sinisterra could cost around £25 million, which would be excellent value for money. Now at centre forward, Newcastle already have Callum Wilson and Chris Wood, who are pretty good mid-table strikers, but I do think that in order to push for the top four, Newcastle would need an improvement. And the player I would target would be Leicester's Kelechi Iheanacho. Iheanacho is what I would describe as a deeper line forward, a striker who drops off from the front line to link the attack, and he's very good at doing this. He's able to drop into the space behind the midfield, receive the ball, turn and then find runners ahead with a perfectly weighted through ball, and this would work perfectly with Sinisterra playing as an inside forward, making those runs in behind the back line. And Iheanacho's creative ability can be seen from his FB ref report. As you can see, he ranks in the 90th percentiles for assists and expected assists as well, was also ranking fairly highly for progressive passes, dribbles and progressive carries, as well as for pressures and tackles as well. He is ranking quite low for goal scoring metrics, but I would say that this is more down to the role he's used in at Leicester, as he is more often used as an attacking midfielder than a forward at times. But Iheanacho has also underperformed his non-penalty XG slightly, so I do think this is part of his game where he does need to improve, as he's only scored 8 goals in 42 games in all competitions this season. However, last season he did manage to hit 19 in 39 games, and overall I think he's a pretty good finisher, so in a better performing side, playing alongside the likes of Guimaraes, Joe Linton and Sinisterra, who can all make runs ahead of his deeper movement, I think Iheanacho can develop into a top level talent, as the ability is there. He is only 25, 26 in October as well, so hasn't even come into his peak yet. He'd probably only cost around 25 to 30 million pounds I'd say, which I think would be a fair amount for Newcastle to pay. So this would be Newcastle's starting lineup in the squad with all my transfers. Dubravka in goal, Bremer and Dan Burn or Fabian Schär as the starting centre-backs, with Trippier and Rome the full-backs, Sangare as a defensive midfield with Guimaraes and Joe Linton ahead, with Willock and Shelvey as the backups, which does look like a very good midfield, and I think a front three of Alan Saint-Maximin from the right, Sinisterra from the left, and Iheanacho as a deeper line forward is perfectly balanced, and with this squad Eddie Howe can move to a few different systems as well, maybe using a back three of Bremer, Schär and Burn, or using a front two of Iheanacho alongside either Wood or Wilson, and also having players like Almiron and Fraser to come off the bench. And all of these 5 players would cost around 140 to 150 million pounds I would estimate. But which of my selections do you agree and disagree with? Let me know in the comment section below, and would this Newcastle side be able to get into the top 4 next season?